Hello, everyone. I'm Emmanuel Crosser, a lead talent acquisition consultant at Diversifying Group, and I'll be your host for the day. My role within the organization is working on end-to-end recruitment campaigns, helping our clients on the D&I journey and being a true critical friend. I'm absolutely delighted to have partnered with eBay on our journey to creating more inclusive workplaces together. And the theme of today's session will be all around the graduate scheme. Applications are now open and will be closing on the 7th of December. So if you are able to get your applications through as soon as possible, that will be great. We do want you to get involved throughout the session as it goes on. We'll have polls that will be posted. So if you can participate, that will be great. If you can, please stay on mute. However, if you've got questions, do place them within the chat box. Some of them will be answered as the session goes on, but we'll also have a full Q&A session towards the end where the panelists will be able to answer any of your other questions. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our panel of graduates today. And I'd like to start off with Yonchi. Hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yunchi. I joined the eBay graduate scheme in July of this year, and my first rotation is in the monetization promotions team.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much. And can we have Mada, please?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Madalena. I am one of the first generations of grads. So I'm in my second rotation in Insights, and previously I did one in trading electronics. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Mada. And we've got Rohan.
Hey, everyone. Great to see you all here today. Welcome to the webinar. So I am one of the grads, obviously, and I joined in July 2021. So I've been at eBay for about a year and 4 months. I was working in the C2C team, consumer selling team for my first rotation, and now I'm working in the trading team.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we've got Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar. I'm the second generation of the graduate, and my first rotation is in the B2B seller marketing team.
Thank you. So these will be our panelists for today. The section that we're about to go in is really just going a little bit more in depth, asking some of the panelists some questions around the eBay grad scheme. So what initially attracted you to the eBay grad program? And if we can start with Mada, perhaps?
Yes, definitely. So I think first things first, I was inspired by the values that eBay is having. So connecting people and building communities to create economic opportunities. I think that was very interesting, and I really wanted to create this wider good. But personally speaking, I felt like the grad scheme provides me the growth opportunity that I need. Also because it is a rotational graduate program. I had the chance to experience 2 sides of the business. So one of them is seller focused, and the other one might be much more of a back function, not interacting with any sellers. And lastly, I think eBay is a great company that has a wonderful, vivid culture, and it is involved so much in communities of inclusion and makes everybody welcome that throughout the recruitment process, I felt that, and I really wanted to be part of this team and to kind of make this go further down the line. Therefore, I really wanted to be one of the grads.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And what about you, Yanchi?
Of course. So I would say I'm one of those people that has kind of like a personal connection with eBay. So ever since I was 10 years old and had access to my parents' credit cards, I would buy a lot of things from eBay. So when I saw the eBay job posting, I knew that I had to apply. And the e-commerce industry as well, I think is a very great industry to start in. And what better company than to work for eBay as your first role? And so when I was going through the graduate scheme description, what really stood out to me was the variety of rotations that I could get involved in. And I myself am from an engineering background, but I really felt that this graduate scheme was one that could accommodate to my skill sets and interests. So to those of you on the call, I just would like to reiterate that no matter what your degree, discipline or background, do not worry about it. Absolutely go ahead and apply, and you will find that the graduate scheme is very able to accommodate your interests.
I like that. Thank you for sharing. And although I have asked specific members of the panel these questions, please do feel free to any of the other panel members if you've got anything that you'd like to add on top, okay? But can you tell the sort of audience what a typical day looks like? And if we start with you, Rohan.
Sure thing. So where I work at the moment it's called the horizontal trading team. We look after basically our UK-wide seller coupon program. So they're essentially sort of buyer discount coupons, and my team and I look after the operations behind that coupon setup. So in my sort of typical week, it entails a variety or a combination of sort of team meetings, project meetings, one-to-ones, and then sort of in between all of that time, in between the 1 hour, whatever, half an hours that I have between meetings, that's when I sort of take care of the operational work. So setting up coupons in our Salesforce system, sending them out to sellers, managing any sort of ad hoc issues or escalations with people in the wider trading team. And then when I'm in the office, sometimes I might go out for a coffee or for a lunch with my manager or, the other grads or frankly, just anyone else in the office. And it's a really sort of, informal, sort of very friendly environment in the office, which is what I think separates eBay from a lot of other companies, and is, one of the reasons definitely why I chose to apply here.
Right, it seems like you've enjoying your time there so far, which is good to hear. And what about yourself, Yanshi?
Yeah, so I think my day-to-day really does vary. So it's probably easier if I describe my week. So in a typical week, I would say that I do spend quite a lot of time in meetings, and these meetings really vary as well. So sometimes they're very small groups within my team, but a lot of the time I will have bigger meetings with a lot of members of different teams as well. But I will also regularly have one-to-ones with my managers and a mentor as well. And then in between these meetings, I kind of echo very similar to Rohan's work, which is that I will use those times to catch up with my projects. So the work that I do really does vary as well. So sometimes it is quite operational, and so I work in the promotions team, as I've mentioned before. So sometimes the operational side would be like processing our promotions and discounts, but other times I might help with analytics. I might also help with a bit of planning as well. And yeah, overall, just I think occasionally when I do have my free time, so my Mondays and Fridays tend to be a bit quieter, I'll use those times to really do my self-development. So one of the skills that I'm really trying to get trained in at the moment is like coding, SQL and data analytics. So I typically use my quieter times when I have longer periods to work on my self-development too.
I like that. Can you tell me a little bit more around the self-development piece? Is that something that eBay does promote internally as well? And that's in general to anyone on the panel.
I think eBay does very well this promotion of different types of upskilling opportunities. So we have different types of soft skill courses such as public speaking or leadership, but also you have functional training. And if your team feels like you need some training, you can also be sent to different types of opportunities. Like I recently completed a mini MBA in marketing, and then I did a lot of research courses based on the needs of my insights team, but also as a grad, you also have a calendar that intertwine different types of on-the-job learning, plus different types of sessions and some learning circles, which are basically opportunity for us to share with each other how much we've learned and what have we done with the time of self-development, like Yunki covered previously, for example, on Mondays and Fridays.
Oh, I like that. So it seems like even within the self-development, there's quite a bit of collaboration as well in terms of if you potentially learn something, then there could be a discussion around it too. What about outside of your day-to-day roles? What else do you get involved in at eBay? And potentially start with yourself, Rohan.
Sure thing. So At eBay, the great thing is that there are so many ways to get involved with extracurricular activities that enable you to not only, gain more visibility and exposure and almost, establish yourself within the business, but they also enable you to connect with stakeholders that you would normally not have had the opportunity to do so. So I myself have been quite involved in our BAME society, which is now called Embrace, which essentially, as you can imagine, kind of promotes the inclusion of people from ethnic minority backgrounds within the workplace. For example, last year we put together a Diwali dinner, which was like, just great to have, and it really shows that eBay cares about communities and their festivities as well. And another society that I've been involved with is one called Future Leaders, which essentially exists to kind of help early young professionals earlier on in their career to gain more exposure to senior leadership and to, in a way, kind of, stand for development opportunities for younger people in the business. So one thing that we might have coming up soon is, for example, a hot seat with the UKLT, which is our UK leadership team, kind of the executive team at the top of the UK business. And it's a great way for us to learn more about how they think, how they work, whilst also, enabling us to kind of cultivate relationships with them.
I like that. And what about yourself, Mada?
I think communities of inclusion are my favorite topic, speaking about the eBay culture, but I'm just going to summarize what I want to say by saying that eBay employees are encouraged to volunteer as well. So we have some allocation of some days in which we can go volunteering. Like, for example, next week, I'm going to volunteer for a party for Age UK, where I will take care of some elderly people in the center. But I'm also involved in the communities of interest and communities of inclusion, such as, for example, I lead EcoBay, which is the network of the employees that are concerned about global warming. And we do different types of projects that raise awareness about this cause. Like, for example, months ago, we launched Geeky, which is a platform that tracks the consumption of carbon for each and every employee. And then we have different types of fun activations, like, for example, while being part of the United in Pride, I organized the Pride party in our backyard. And I would say that besides like communities of inclusion and volunteering outside your and inside your working schedule, you also have the option to participate in different types of conferences as a volunteer. Like, for example, we have Small Businesses Roadshow, as well as eBay Open, which is our biggest conference that we held for different types of sellers. So plenty of opportunity to like hone your soft skills and also network with other individuals while doing something that you enjoy and you like.
It sounds like there's some really exciting things there. How easy is it to get involved in some of these extracurricular activities? If you can just talk us through some of the processes. Maybe, I know you mentioned the Future Leaders or being part of the networks. How do grads get themselves to be part of this?
I mean, to be honest, like it's as easy as, joining a Slack channel and then, taking it from there and volunteering yourself, like putting yourself forward for organizing things for that specific community. I think that's the great thing, is that there's not so much of there's not really a process, to be honest, like in place for registering yourself. So it's very much like, you take responsibility for, like, if you want to do something, then you go ahead and just do that kind of thing.
I like that. Thank you. And what about the culture? Because I know specifically for myself, an inclusive culture is something that's very important to me. But if we start with Rachel, can you tell us a little bit more about eBay's inclusive culture?
I think, well, first of all, I think Mada and Rohan have covered it very extensively. I do think one of the things that stood out for me in terms of inclusivity, and I guess drawing it back to the benefit of being an eBay graduate, is, in the same vein that eBay is a relatively flat corporate system, it just makes it very easy to network. And as a grad, you are somewhat the most junior level people. But it's not to say that you can't reach out to someone higher up, for a coffee chat to understand their job scope a lot more. And I think that being a grad and the whole company knowing that you're a grad it also gives you a sort of a pass, to send them an email saying that I'm very interested in your role. Can you tell me more, without it coming off very awkward or random, because you have quote unquote an excuse to do so. And in the 5 months that I've been here, you're never looked down for being just a grad. Your opinions are always valued. And there's a lot of autonomy in your work as well. So I think that's a different side of what I would think is an inclusive culture at a workforce. Yeah,
I like that. And yet again, Madda, I know when it comes to inclusive culture, it's been a thread through all of your answers. But did you have anything else to add on top?
Yeah, I guess like eBay celebrates very well differences, and it celebrates unique characteristics of individuals. Like I'm not a native English speaker, as you might have noticed, and my name is quite hard to pronounce, and my line manager spent around 10 minutes in our first one-to-one just to like make sure that he nails the pronunciation of it. So I think that when it comes to like celebrating different creeds and different religions and different groups that you belong to, eBay does a very good job. And even when things are getting tougher, like for example, I'm Eastern European and we all know what happened in Ukraine, eBay mobilized their forces in order to fundraise for these individuals. And it made me feel like home, even though I'm not at home. And it made me feel like my background and what I stand for as a person matter.
Mm-hmm. I really like that. Thank you. And Rachel, can you tell me one thing people may not expect about the eBay grad program?
Well, I sort of answered it in the previous question. I think the culture was a very pleasant surprise. And it's one of the first things that I've sort of heard about before actually applying. And since starting the role, it's from what I understand as well, other people who have worked across UK, eBay is the first company that I worked for in the UK. And I think a lot of people can tell that I'm not native to this country. And I do think that a lot of people agree that eBay's culture is very unique in the sense that the people that you work with are all just really lovely people, and it makes the job a lot easier, especially when things get difficult. People will shoulder on the different responsibilities. And I mean, I speak from my own experience, you never really feel alone in your set of responsibilities. You always feel supported. That was a very pleasant surprise. And surprise about the culture.
Good. And what about yourself, Yanji?
I know the topic of communities of inclusion has already been mentioned, but I'd really like to give my perspective, which is that for me, the one thing that was very unique is really just all the events that happen all the time at eBay. I can totally understand for those on the call, being a graduate, starting your first role and thinking, oh, is this going to be like a 9 to 5 or I'm just in an office all the time? And I can guarantee you that if you join the eBay graduate scheme, it really is not like that at all. Every single week, we always have something different going on. For example, one week we had Diwali, so we had like a trolley with sweets going around. A few weeks ago, we had a murder mystery where actors actually came and you could all get involved. And then there's all of the different events for diversity as well, like a pride party, and like you can also get involved with volunteering. And these to me was so unexpected and so unique, but also incredibly amazing and positive to be able to get involved in all these events. It really just makes going into the workplace like somewhere that you really feel like you're looking forward to it and you can really get involved. And as well, it's great for just getting to know people, so you don't feel like you're a grad and you're kind of isolated in your own team. You can really use these events that they throw to really get to know people too.
I like that. And just around the events, I'd like to open this to all of the panel members. I wonder what's been your favorite event and why?
So for me, it was the murder mystery that happened a few weeks ago. So I am a very big fan of anything to do with like detective games. So I had no idea that there'll be an event that sort of just suited my interest so much. So we had loads of fun. And in it as well, I think it was a really, really fantastic team building exercise. I was in a team with people outside of my department as well. So I kind of got to know other people and just working together with them, problem solving. It was overall really fun.
I like that. And anyone else?
So actually, I just wanted to bring it back to the original question, Emmanuel, about the one thing that you might not expect from the graduate program. So from my perspective, one thing that I really kind of pleasantly surprised me in my first rotation is the amount of responsibility that they give you as grads. So you could potentially, you know, be the only grad or the only junior member of your team, because our UK business is a very lean organization, and almost like by virtue of the structure of the organization, you'll be able to own an entire work stream, which you wouldn't get in a lot of other workplaces. So an example is when I started in the C2C team last year, I was kind of like the UK C2C point of contact for our managed payments migration, which is, you know, such a great way to learn and have such, you know, a great deal of responsibility early on in your career. A great experience, you know, to put against your portfolio and like to speak about in the future as well.
I like that. Thank you. Mad, oh, there we go. Madda, you're just frozen on my screen, but you're back. And can you tell us a bit about the application process? Do you have any key tips for anyone in the audience today? And if we start with yourself, Rachel.
Yeah, and I think it was also a question that was asked in the chat. And as Faye mentions, it's a 3-round process. So starting from the point of application, it starts with a CV round. So you send in your CV application, and then afterwards, if successful, you'll hear back with a competency round, and that involves verbal, numerical. And if that goes well, then we move on to the phone interview. It's a short 20 minutes, bit of a behavioral phone interview style question. And then we move on to the assessment center, and it involves a bit of pre-work, usually 1 week before the actual assessment center. So yeah, it's a 3-round process. I think it's quite similar to a lot of the other graduate schemes. And in terms of key tips, I think one thing, I'll say 2 things actually. Oh, sorry, 3 things. The first, with regards to the competency round, I think if you have the benefit of being in, I guess, a business or finance related discipline, I think your numerical competency would be relatively easy to practice as well. If you're applying to a lot of other companies, grad schemes, they usually also have a numerical component. But I came from a language background, so I really did struggle with that, finding time to practice my math. Yeah, so if you're in a similar situation, I would say that do fork out some time to, you know, just practice your numerical skills. And then another thing for the assessment center that really helped me was watching consulting style videos. I found that the layout of the assessment center, because you're only given a short span of time to present your case, I think you have to be good at communicating. So there's this YouTube channel that I really like. It's called Firm Learning. And he teaches a lot on top-down communication, how to, you know, communicate effectively. So hopefully that's of some practical use to anyone in the audience. And finally, I know a lot of people don't like LinkedIn networking, but it was something that really helped me as well. Given that eBay was this eBay graduate program is very new. There wasn't that many people that I could find on eBay, but the people that I could find, they were very generous with the tips that they would give me. You know, how can I best prepare for the phone interview, or how can I best prepare for the assessment center? And I think this advice also is helpful to, you know, overall when you're doing your other job applications, is that try to find people on LinkedIn. And out of 10 people that you message, maybe 5 will get back to you, but they will help to, you know, hopefully open doors or point you to the direction of other people who may be very generous in helping you along the way. So I would say those are my 3 main tips.
Well, thank you there, Rachel. And just around the LinkedIn piece, have you got any tips in terms of the type of message to send to someone while reaching out to them?
I think, well, I would say a practical tip would be to not, well, the thing is when you message someone on LinkedIn, you have a very limited word count. So I would say don't waste time introducing yourself. You could state why you're interested in reaching out to them. I think that usually lands very well. And I would say don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just reach out to one person and wait for that person to reply, because usually with job applications, you're working on a very tight timeline. So try to reach out to as many people. I think if you just Google like LinkedIn connection template, you could find how other people have phrased their messages. And I know LinkedIn has a free trial for premium, which gives you, I guess, you can write longer messages, or you can connect with people. And I used the free trial during my application process. So if you haven't used it, this is the time. I think they're still offering it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you are right. I think they are still offering the LinkedIn trial, and with premium, you can certainly add people who aren't within your connection. Yeah, your connection. So some great advice there. And Rohan, do you have any top tips as well in terms of the application process?
Yeah, so I actually just wanted to add to what Rachel said off the back of what she said around LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn is a great platform that you can really leverage to expand your network and really tap into sort of the eBay network and get to know someone before you've even applied here. I think it would be great to like my advice would be to firstly filter by kind of anything that you have in common with people on LinkedIn. So whether that's, a common institution or, a previous company that you've worked at and that they've also worked at. And I would go from there, because then you kind of step from not having anything in common with someone to at least having some mutual sort of connection. In terms of other tips for the application process, I think one thing is to bear in mind that you always want to tailor your application to the style and the sort of cultural vibe of the organization. The vibe at eBay is obviously, like, as I mentioned before, quite sort of personal, quite conversational, and more kind of, I guess, like casual, sort of like that tech kind of culture. So I think whilst you need to bear in mind, you should, follow the top-down method of communication, speak, like present yourself in the best way possible. It's not sort of the same interview as, a private, the interview that you do at a private equity firm or like in the city or something like that. So, and a lot of the time, interviews become quite personal, quite conversational and quite personable, and end up being like a two-way conversation rather than just like a one way. In terms of other tips as well, I would just say, just try and focus on your unique why. So why are you applying to eBay, and just try and really illustrate your points of engagement. So say if you come to this webinar today, I would definitely recommend sort of shouting that out in your application, saying like, you've come to this webinar, you've learned more about eBay culture, you've heard sort of candidly, directly from people who work there, etc. And then also just try and, highlight obviously your transferable skills, anything cool or interesting that you've done outside of work that could somehow relate to eBay and the kind of things that you'd be doing on the grad scheme here. I think, like, at the end of the day, like, people love to talk about their jobs because that's sort of 90% of what they spend their time doing. But on the back of that, it's like we spend so much time doing, like, working. It's like someone, it would be nice for an interviewer to hear something different as well, rather than just hearing about your work.
I get some great advice there, Rohan. Thank you. And I'd like to extend the question out to Amada and Yanchi as well. Do you have any tips to add on to the other two?
Yeah, definitely. So I will start by, if you feel like this is a company for you, just apply. Because I know a lot of people that are kind of waiting a lot of time. And unfortunately, this type of grad schemes are very competitive. So the opportunity might close before you decided to throw your hat into the ring. And then, like, I think Rachel and Rohan covered a lot of, like, what are the strategical things that you need to do. But I would also say that, like, while you're applying for a company, just make sure that you speak about yourself and about your interests and passions, and like you make your personality shine, but you also like try to learn out of that experience. And if it's not going to be successful, just try to take it as a learning opportunity and kind of understand what would work well and what wouldn't in a working scenario for you. So I would say these are my tips. Like try to also have fun throughout the process. Looking back, like I thought that like I could have taken the assessment center a bit more lightly and focus on getting to know the people in the room rather than asking myself whether or not I'm good enough to pass further down the line, or similarly with the phone interview. So I would just say like breathe in and out before you start and try to focus on yourself as an individual and take it as a learning journey as opposed to like a competitive environment, because that would also make you stand out at the end of the day.
Thank you. And certainly true. I think people just need to apply at times. Too many people spend time second guessing themselves. Actually, do I have the experience? Am I right for the role? Just take a plunge, as you never know. You miss out on the opportunity that you don't apply for, and you never know if you don't put it through. And thank you very much. So I had a number of questions that were sent through from some audience who weren't able to attend today. So it was in terms of the rotations, do you get to choose the teams that you join and which areas you'd like to develop in? And yet again, these questions are open to all panel members.
So me and Rohan are part of the first generation of like generation eBay. So we actually had 2 rotations. While the first one is chosen by the recruitment committee based on your strengths and your skills and capabilities and where potentially you would fit into the team. The second one is influenceable in the sense of like it's decided and you can input what is your preference and make a case of why do you fit in that respective team.
Yeah, thank you. And we touched upon it a little bit, but how are you supported to take on more responsibility, and what's helped you with growing your confidence in your roles?
I think something that I really appreciated my manager is that we would have one-to-one weekly catch-ups, and usually one of the things she asked me at the start was, what are your interests in? And she balances what I'm interested in with the business needs for our department. So for example, I work in the marketing function, and within our quite lean team, there isn't someone to sort of look after the data. It's like, looking at how our email has performed. And that coincides with my own interest in data. I don't come from that sort of background, but I do have like an interest in data analysis, looking at how the numbers can influence how we decide to tailor our marketing strategies. So that's one of the ways that my manager encourages me to find what I like and match it with a way that I can value add to the team.
Thank you. Would anyone else within the panel like to add on to that one?
I think like one thing I will say from my experience is that you always kind of feel supported, stepping up and taking more responsibility for doing things outside of your comfort zone, because that is just, the nature of the workplace. Like it's a very sort of, even though obviously eBay is a large corporation at the end of the day, the culture is very startup-y. So say, for example, if I spot a gap in a process or I see a way that I can improve or optimize that process, my manager or my team is, very open and supportive to me just taking the initiative to go ahead and fill that gap and then show them. And that's often appreciated actually when you if you take initiative, do something, and then go and show it to your manager, it's almost like a surprise and delight. You know, like it's great for your, you know, your perception, and it shows that, yeah, you're taking initiative. And I think it's like, in summary, I would say it's encouraged.
I like that. I mean, just to summarize that, it really feels like you've got an autonomy and a voice to be heard as well. No matter what project you're working on, you've got the opportunity to really get involved. So there's a question within the Q&A box, which says, which soft skills and hard skills are necessary in the workplace? Have you developed any? And if so, what skills were they?
I think, you know, like in my role, and in my past rotation, my first rotation rather, one of the skills that I had to develop a lot was dealing with pushback from people, especially when working on global projects. So, for example, in the C2C team, I had to kind of facilitate conversations between American, German, and British stakeholders. And, you know, being in a different country, a different market altogether from someone, creates that initial barrier to forming any kind of rapport, because you're reliant on Zoom to speak to that person. And so I think one of the key soft skills that I've developed is understanding what motivates people and how to tap into that and influence people. And also, you know, the importance of building rapport and relationships with people, because it's not something that you underestimate. I think the power and the influence of that skill before starting any job, especially when you're a graduate, when you're in that university environment. But when you start working, I think you realize it's a very key, important skill to have in your toolkit.
Wonderful. And would any other panel members like to add on to that one before we go into the next question?
I think it definitely depends on what were your rotations. Like, for example, I had two very technical rotations. I first did training, and right now I'm doing insights. And you have to upskill based on what is your day-to-day job. But in terms of like soft skills, obviously, like you learn so much about public speaking and team working and trying to communicate your ideas much more clearly. Like, for example, we had the 2-day workshop about how to pitch an idea to the executive board last year, which was very useful when we did our graduate project that reunited all the grads under the same umbrella and made us work for a real problem that eBay faces. So I think that we had plenty of opportunities to hone both of our soft and hard skills. Depends on like your rotations, and also depends on how much do you seek that opportunities and how much are you willing to volunteer for different tasks that might be a bit reaching, might be a bit harder than what you are used to do on a daily basis.
Wonderful, thank you. And some of the questions that were asked have been answered within there, but I just thought I'd like to share with all of the audience. So there was a question in there from Sonia around how many positions will they be available. So there's approximately 6 roles that will be available. There was a question asking around the length of the grad scheme, and it will be around 22 months. So it's a 22-month program. And Michelle asked a question around, are interviews more technical or behavioral? And should we expect star type questions? Now, Faye's come up with a very good response for this. Yet again, I'll share the response, but whether anyone within the panel has anything they'd like to add. But Faye mentioned that the STAR is a great approach. We like to look at behavioral and also performance on the online assessments and assessment center. We appreciate everyone is different, which is why we have a well-rounded process. We want to get to know you. Very good answer, Faye. But from the panelists, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Sure. So my experience of the interview process, and I feel like I mentioned this at the start. So really do not worry about too much about whether your background and technical skills necessarily line up with what you think e-commerce is, because when you actually enter the workforce, you're going to realize that there are a lot of different projects to work on, and these require a lot of different skills, so a very wide skill range. So for my interview, I think that what eBay tries and does is it tries to match you with the eBay culture, and it's more checking if you will fit culturally with eBay. And what I feel is that if honestly, as Emmanuel said before, if you feel that this is there's something that you want to apply for, and you like the feeling and culture of eBay, then go for it. And then in your interview, the STAR technique is a good approach, but mainly it is to just highlight whether your experience is both technically and also outside of uni, for example, any placements or any volunteering work you've done, whether these experiences fit within eBay's culture.
Thank you very much. There was another question in there around can we have the chance to become a formal staff after the program? Faye said yes, and that is a great question as well. Yes, it's driven by budget and headcount, but we are always hiring. And the exciting thing about eBay, along UK roles, but there's also roles across global markets as well. Okay. So we've had a question come in. When is the expected start date for the graduate scheme? I can see Faye typing an answer there, so we'll have one for you in a moment. There we go. And I've just lost the question. There it is. So early August will be the expected start date. There was a couple more questions I had from members who were unable to make it today, and this will be out to the panel as well. One of them is, have there been any challenges you've had to overcome, and how did eBay support you to do this?
So I feel like one of the challenges that, having been in my first rotation for about 4 months now, I experienced, and it was kind of like a fluctuation in my workload. So when I first started, I was just getting settled in and everything was calm. And then suddenly, sometimes things unexpected will happen, and you have to deal with these. Now, I've really learned from my experience, and I was very much someone who tried to deal with things myself. But actually, I realized that the support from both my managers, my team, and the wider team, or even the well-being support, is in fact very high. So I feel that if really to learn prioritization, and that there really are people outside your work that will be able to support you and you can reach out to. And I think that's very important.
Brilliant, thank you.
I'm happy to answer this question as well. I think a highlight and as well as a bit of a low point was when, because the seller marketing team that I sit in, we overlook a lot of events as well. And at the height of one of the biggest events, my direct manager had to take unexpected leave. So because we were a very lean team, there wasn't a proper handover process. And for the first few weeks, I was left with this huge task, and I had no idea how to go about it. And it was very nice to see just different managers from different departments. They would step in and say, if you ever need anything, you can always let me know, and I can see how I can help you. And it was a very busy process. And as much as sometimes in your work, it's relatively a 9-to-5 job, in the sense that rarely do you have to work overtime. We admit that there are certain busy periods where you just have to, sort of bite the bullet and maybe work a bit longer. But my manager was also very, she was very mindful of setting boundaries at work. So there was a time when I was sending emails at 11, and she had to step in and say that, Rachel, there is life beyond your work. And I think it's very important for your manager to lead by example, as well as when you're so junior, to step in and really help to intervene when she feels that things are getting too busy for you.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. And did anyone else have anything they wanted to add to that one?
I think we joined when the COVID was still impeding us from going into the office. And I think that the new way of doing business, the hybrid one, is making you think outside the box with regards to networking and engaging with people on a daily basis. So I think that that was one of my biggest challenges, to kind of figure it out, how exactly do you find creative ways in order to form work relationships with people that you might not see them every single day. And it's also like, how exactly do you interact with them in order to have a long lasting impression on them, and in order to build up your credibility and your reputation in the business.
Wonderful, thank you. And just to finish off, I think it'll be great if you can all give one piece of advice to anyone applying. Oh, there is one quick question actually that's just come in before we answer that one. But how often are you typically in the office each week? And I know it's a hybrid approach, but does it vary for each person, or?
So it's kind of like up to your discretion, the actual days that you're in. People generally tend to align that with their team, but I tend to go in around 2 to 3 days a week. And I believe the kind of hybrid office mandate is 2 days per week at least.
Wonderful.
For the UK.
Thank you for that.
Just to quickly add, if you have a seller-facing job, just to quickly add, if you have a seller-facing job or you have agency meetings, the days in which you go to that counts as days in the office. So ideally, you can pick and mix when and how are you gonna do your work, whether or not it's from your agency, from your seller, from the office, or from home.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing. And Jess, just to lastly finish off, if we can get one piece of advice from each of you just to leave the audience with today, what would that be?
I guess I'll start. So I would just say, just be your most, I know it sounds really cliche and everyone will tell you the same thing, but just try and be as authentic as you can, because you really don't want to end up in a place where, you know, you feel like the culture isn't a right fit for you. Guess I'll hand over to Rachel.
I would say an advice, and don't know how helpful it'll be to this particular grad scheme, but I think it's important to remember that many different paths can still lead to different destinations, or like the same destination. So did have a chance, and I won't go too much into it, but I started off as an intern at eBay first and then transitioned to the graduate program. So I think if it's not eBay, but if it's, say, another company that you want to go to, I think you just have to remember that, yeah, paths aren't always linear. There are many different ways where you can get into the place that you want to be. I think you just have to be, just have to make the best use out of each situation that you are in. And you just trust that the journey and the amount of input that you give in will lead you to a right place. Yeah.
So for me, I would say that, again, this may sound a bit cliche, but it really is as simple as, if you like the sound of this grad scheme from what you've heard on this webinar or from what you've seen in the job description, then please just go for it and apply. So for example, I am someone who always, every now and again, will have self-doubt, right? But I'm here and I made it. So I know you can as well.
Thank you.
I guess it's very, very hard to top all these pieces of advice that were brilliant. But for me, it's just like, bring your true self to work and through the recruitment process. Because at the end of the day, it's a two-way street. So you choose the company and the company chooses you. And if you don't bring your true persona to the recruitment, you don't know whether or not there is any compatibility. So you wouldn't want to end up in a position in which you wouldn't enjoy what you're doing. So, and I also echo what Yunki said, like, just apply. Like, if you liked it, apply.
Some absolutely fantastic pieces of advice there. Thank you, everyone. And that's it for the session. So I just want to say thank you to all of the panelists for spending your time and having a discussion with us around everything. So yet again, thank you. And thank you to everyone within the audience as well. Please do apply for the roles. There have been links posted within the chat boxes. But if you also visit Diversifying, eBay's got a profile on there which has all of the grad roles. And just to reiterate, the applications are open now, but they will be closing on the 7th. So don't doubt yourself. If eBay sounds like somewhere you would like to work, just put through an application. Otherwise, you'll never know. Yet again, thank you everyone for joining us today. And this is recorded and it will be shared if you do want to view it later. But thank you everyone for your time. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
See you later.
you.